Hi everyone, I'm Pranamya, and today I'm going to be reading you the story called Powder by Tobias Wolff. Now, some of you may know that there's a winter storm going on right now, and I live in Texas, so I have been hit by it too. And I've experienced all the power outrages, the Wi Fi not working, and it is really bad. And while I was outside looking at all the snow, it reminded me of one of my favorite short stories called Powder. Now, the plot of this short story is basically about a father and a son who take a skiing trip. Now, the father has a problem because his wife wants him to come home with his son before the Christmas Eve dinner. But he has a different point of view in life, and he thinks that he should try to enjoy all the moments with his son. So, you might at first glance think that the title means powder because of snow, but really what they're trying to say here is that it's light, like the father's approach to life. He doesn't want his boy, or his son basically, to just have such a fixed idea of something. He wants to disintegrate that and show him his approach to life and how light he takes it and how he likes to take risks. And the moral of the story teaches us that we need to try to take life as it comes, not constantly plan ahead like the son does in the story. Now, I don't want to spoil the story anymore for you, so let's get started. Powder by Tobias Wolff. Just before Christmas, my father took me skiing at Mount Baker. He'd had to fight for the privilege of my company because my mother was still angry with him for sneaking me into a nightclub during his last visit to see Thelonious Monk. He wouldn't give up. He promised, hand on heart, to take good care of me and have me home for dinner on Christmas Eve. And she relented. But as we were checking out of the lodge that morning, it began to snow, and in this snow he observed some rare quality that made it necessary for us to get in one last run. We got in several last runs. He was indifferent to my fretting. Snow whirled around us in bitter, blinding squalls, hissing like sand, and still we skied. As the lift bore us to the peak yet again, my father looked at his watch and said, "Crimey, this'll have to be a fast one." By now I couldn't see the trail. There was no point in trying. I stuck close behind him and did what he did, and somehow made it to the bottom without sailing off a cliff. We returned our skis and my father put chains on the Austin Healey, while I swayed from foot to foot, clamping my mittens, wishing I was home. I could see everything. The green tablecloth, the plates with the holy pattern, the red candles waiting to be lit. We passed a diner on our way out. "You want some soup?" my father asked. I shook my head. "Buck up," he said. "I'll get you there. Right, doctor?" I was supposed to say right, doctor, but I didn't say anything. A state trooper waved us down outside the resort, where a pair of sawhorses blocked the road. He came up to our car, bent down to my father's window, his face bleached with the cold, snowflakes clinging to his eyebrows and the fur trim of his jacket and cap. "Don't tell me," my father said. The trooper told him. The road was closed. It might get cleared, it might not. Storm took everyone by surprise. Hard to get people moving. Christmas Eve, what can you do? My father said, "Look, we're talking about 5-6 inches. I've taken this car through much worse than that." The trooper straightened up. His face was out of sight, but I could hear him. "The road is closed." My father sat with both hands on the wheel, rubbing the wood with his thumbs. He looked at the barricade for a long time. He seemed to be trying to master the idea of it. Then he thanked the trooper, and with a weird old matey show of caution, turned the car around. "Your mother will never forgive me for this," he said. "We should have left this morning," I said. "Doctor." He didn't speak to me again until we were both in a booth at the diner, waiting for our burgers. She won't forgive me, he said. Do you understand? Never. I guess, I said, though no guesswork was required. She wouldn't forgive him. I can't let that happen. He bent toward me. I'll tell you what I want. I want us to be all together again. Is that what you want? Yes, sir. He bumped my chin with his knuckles. That's all I needed to hear. When we finished eating, he went to the payphone in the back of the diner, then joined me in the booth again. I figured he'd called my mother, but he didn't give a report. He sipped on his coffee and stared out a window at the empty road. Come on, he said, though not to me. A little while later, he said it again. When the trooper's car went past, lights flashing, he got up, dropped some money on the check. Okay, vamonos. The wind had died. The snow was falling straight down, much less of it, and lighter. We drove away from the resort, right up to the barricade. Move it, my father told me. When I looked at him, he said, What are you waiting for? I got out and pushed one of the stall horses aside, then put it back after he drove through. He pushed the door open for me. Now you're an accomplice, he said. We go down together. He put the car in gear and gave me a look. Joke, son. Down the first long stretch, I watched the road behind us to see if the trooper was on our tail. The barricade vanished. Then there was nothing but snow. Snow on the road, snow picking up from the chains, snow on the trees, snow in the sky, and our trail in the snow. Then I faced forward and had a shock. There were no tracks ahead of us. My father was breaking virgin snow between tall tree lines. He was humming Stars Fell on Alabama. I felt snow brush along the floorboards under my feet. To keep my hands from shaking, I clamped them between my knees. My father grunted thoughtfully and said, Don't ever try this yourself. I won't. That's what you say now, but someday when you'll get your license, and then you'll think you can do anything. Only you won't be able to do this. You need, I don't know, a certain instinct. Maybe I have it. You don't. You have your strong points, sure, just not this. I only mention it because I don't want you to get the idea this is something anybody can do. I'm a great driver. That's not a virtue, okay? Just a fact, and one you should be aware of. Of course, you'd have to give this old heap some credit, too. There aren't many cars I'd try this with. Listen. I did listen. I heard the slap of the chains, the stiff, jerky rasp of the wipers, the purr of the engine. It did really purr. The old heap was almost new. My father couldn't afford it and kept promising to sell it, but here it was. I said, Where do you think that policeman went to? Are you warm enough? He reached over and cranked up the blower. Then he turned off the wipers. We didn't need them. The clouds had brightened. A few sparse, feathery flakes drifted into our slipstream and were swept away. We left the trees and entered a broad field of snow that ran level for a while and then tilted sharply downward. Orange stakes had been planted at intervals in two parallel lines, and my father steered a course between them, though they were far apart, to leave a considerable doubt in my mind as to exactly where the road lay. He was humming again, doing little scat riffs around the melody. Okay then, what are my strong points? Don't get me started, he said. It'll take all day. Oh, right, name one. Easy, you always think ahead. True, I always thought ahead. I was a boy who kept his clothes on numbered hangers to ensure proper rotation. I bothered my teachers for homework assignments far ahead of their due dates, so I could draw up schedules. I thought ahead, and that was why I knew there would be troopers waiting for us at the end of our ride, if we even got there. What I didn't know was that my father would wheedle and plead his way past them. He didn't sing O Tannenbaum, but just about, and get me home for dinner, buying a little more time before my mother decided to make the split final. I knew we'd get caught. I was resigned to it. And maybe for this reason, I stopped moping and began to enjoy myself. Why not? This was one for the books, like being in a speedboat, only better. You can't go downhill in a boat, and it was all ours. And it kept coming. The laden trees, the unbroken surface of the snow, the sudden white vistas. Here and there I saw hints of the road, ditches, fences, stakes, though not so many that I could have found my own way. But then I didn't have to. My father was driving. My father, in his 48th year, rumpled, kind, bankrupt of honor, flushed with certainty. He was a great driver. All persuasion, no coercion. Such subtlety at the wheel, such tactful pedal work. I actually trusted him. And the best was yet to come. Switchbacks and hairpins, impossible to describe. Except maybe to say this. If you haven't driven fresh powder, you haven't driven. Thank you for listening. Bye.